guys, this is the Fat Panda, and I am bringing back the power rankings for the WPF. We are now headed into Season 5, so I thought I'd put down some preseason power rankings. Teams are freshly drafted, nobody's battled yet that I'm aware of, and I thought I'd give some of my first impressions of the various teams that we have going into the season. This is the first season we have with the Gala decks. So we're going to have some G-Max Mons instead of Megas in the usual slot there. Teams are a little smaller because there's a smaller pool to work with. Teams are only 10 large instead of 11. And the format for drafting is a little bit different with specific numbers of Mons per tier allowed instead of a point system like we used to have. 16 coaches, just like always. And I thought I would just give a quick ranking here and show you guys my thoughts of what we've got so far. May as well just hop right into it. Number one overall, my favorite team so far, looking at them, is the Tennessee Red Gyarados, run by our overlord, Big Shane. First thing that sticks out to me when looking at his team on the bottom right there is that he has drafted the almighty Melmetal. Melmetal is probably my favorite of the new Pokemon. It's just hits so hard with Double Iron Bash. It's one of those mons where even though you know basically what's going to come every week, it doesn't really matter. It just kind of steamrolls your team. Whether it's too strong for the Galaradex or not remains to be seen. I guess we'll kind of see how it goes here, but I was definitely not letting the opportunity to have it at least in one season just to see how it performed. Another couple of the hits that I've got here so far are I really like Rotom Heat when paired with Melmetal. Just having something that can take the fire and the non-mold breaker ground attacks aimed at Melmetal. May not really be able to soak fighting hits too well, but it actually really covers Melmetal's kind of weaknesses really, really well, and I thought it made a good pair. Same reason I really, really like the draft of Xatu from the C tier this season. Stats aren't great on Xatu when you look at them, but with access to Magic Bounce and a quad resistance to the fighting attack, it actually managed to form a pretty nice little core there. And with access to Magic Bounce and especially a new move, more or less, from believe it or not, Pokemon Let's Go, they buffed Teleport to make it basically it's a non-damaging U-turn, but it's got -6 priority. So when I look at Xatu there, all I see is it coming in on an attack and then teleporting out the next turn to bring Melmetal in safely, and then Melmetal claims another kill. When I look at the rest of the team, I mean, you could do the same thing for Haxorus or Sneasel or whatnot. It's just that when you got the big boy there, why not just bring him out whenever you can? Another hit that I've got here is a Selgor. I actually really like a Selgor in this format. It's, of all the Mons, the 160 Mons that were drafted so far this season, it is actually the fastest Mon that is currently in use, which is always going to be nice. But it's got all the hazards. It's got Final Gambit. It's got a lot of really fun tools. Only real thing for his team that I didn't really like so much is the Steelix draft choice. He definitely needed some sort of hazards, I believe, well, rocks specifically, even though they've kind of been, nerfed, so to speak, with heavy-duty boots in the game now. Having at least access to stealth rocks is really important, because if you don't even have rocks, then no one has to run the heavy-duty boots, or so on and so forth. So when looking at the rockers, especially with the rockers that are available in C tier, I actually think I would have preferred to see him draft something kind of like Mudsdale. Mudsdale doesn't have the steel typing, but I don't really, when you know Melmetal's going to come basically every game as it is, I feel like having an extra steel typing there is actually more of a hindrance. But it's still, pretty good draft pick. Mudsdale is still free. I think it would have been better. Stamina plus body press plus rocks. All sorts of fun tools there. But overall, still, this is a very, very strong team if you look at it. And I think Melmetal is going to carry them all the way to the postseason, almost no questions asked. At number 2, I have the Melbourne Lucarios, headed by the Sapphire champion from Season 4, and the team itself is looking real strong. Headline there, of course, is Mr. Fish himself, Dracovish, which has another one like Melmetal, where you basically know exactly what's going to come. It's going to click Vicious Rend 95% of the time. The other 5% being if he thinks you're bringing in a water absorber, because those are the only things that are really going to be able to take the hits that Dracovish is dealing out. I really, really like what they've done with Primarina this generation. Now that it has Calm Mind plus Draining Kiss, it has actually become a serious sweeping threat for like late game cleanups, especially if it's like 1 or 2, nuisances on the opponent's team are gone. It can just pretty much take over and heal itself now in a way outside of rest, which is really, really nice. G-Max Gengar is a pretty good G-Max. I'll always, congratulate someone if they get a G-Max, which is also an S tier Pokemon, because then you've got 2 S tiers essentially. And I mean, even if the G-Max doesn't really apply to Amon, that's still a fantastic, spot to be in. G-Max, what is it? G-Max Terror from Gengar. It's a trapping move, which is kind of probably not truly all that necessary. You're not exactly, things that are getting hit by Gengar shouldn't really be living anyway. But still, G-Max Gengar, especially with the access to Nasty Plot now, is an absolute threat and will probably claim KOs in every match it comes in. Galvantula I put on the hit list because Sticky Webs, when you look at his team, are insanely strong. You've got Gengar, you've got Dracovish, Galvantula itself really likes the webs. Passimian as well. There's just Manectric. There's just so many Mons that really, really enjoy having Sticky Webs there, that drafting a Weber seems like it was the absolute right choice, because it'll help you really break through any faster threats that the opponents might be bringing. As far as whiffs go, I don't think Mandibuzz is a whiff per se, but when you look at the team overall, you'll notice that he is really, really going to struggle with taking hard hits from opponents. He's got Mandibuzz, he's got Rhydon, Reuniclus and Primarina, can kind of take hits, but you can tell that the strategy is going to basically be high-octane offense for Melbourne, because the team itself isn't going to hold up in a long fight for the most part. His matches will probably mostly be under 20 turns. It wouldn't surprise me at all, simply because there's just not a lot of fat drafted. At number 3, I have the Minnesota Lycanrocs, a new coach this season, but at least for the WPF, not a new coach in general. And this is one heck of a draft as well. I don't want to say offensive core, because they can be run defensively or bulky or whatever as well, but the core itself of G-Max Grimmsnarl plus Aegislash is a truly unholy thing. There are so few Mons that really want to tangle with both of them, much less one of them, that they're going to terrorize the entire league. Love Mamoswine. I don't really care what the rest of the team looks like. Mamoswine is never a bad Pokemon to have. It's just that strong between Earthquake and Priority. And, Ground Ice Stab is just, it's just absolutely sick. As far as things I don't particularly like about the team, it's not necessarily that I don't like Noivern, but as far as I can tell, unless I am absolutely blanking on something over here, Noivern is actually the only hazard remover that Minnesota drafted for the season so far. Now, of course, everyone's going to go, but heavy-duty boots. Well, yeah, that's really nice, but you can't run heavy-duty boots on everything. And, eventually someone's going to drop down a T-Spike or something, and you can't absorb it. So, having access to more ability to get rid of hazards is very important, but the team itself is still very strong. So, it's going to overcome that one small hiccup and it could be changed in trades or something anyway to become even stronger. At number 4, I have the Sacramento Kingler. It may not be necessarily the Tapu Lucha cores of past, but Ndidi plus Halucha is still a pretty strong combination. Ndidi's doing its best Tapu Lele impression. Not fairy, but it's normal. It's got some decent moves, some okay offense, but of course the headliner is the fact that it has that Psychic Surge, which is used to help Halucha, utilize its unburdened ability with the Psychic Seed. Now, of course, this generation, Halucha has actually gotten significantly stronger, if that was even possible, where now that it has access to close combat as a move, it can actually run something like White Herb instead of running, the Psychic Seed or the Citrus Berry or whatever to try and get Unburden off. So even if you don't see Ndidi and you see Halucha on the opposing team, you know that it's still going to almost definitely activate that Unburden. And, with a Swords Dance or something, that could be the whole show. Halucha did get a bunch of new toys. It's actually a really interesting threat now. It was usually drafted most seasons before with a Tapu or something, but now it doesn't even have to have a terrain user at all. Close combat, Brave Bird, Swords Dance, Acrobatics. It's just got everything you could possibly want now. So it's a really strong bond. And speaking of new shiny tools, we've got Blastoise, which is a spankin' new threat now that it has access to Shell Smash. A long time coming for this mon, something to distinguish itself from its Generation 1 starter peers. The Shell Smash buff has been everything that Blastoise could have dreamed of, and now it's going to be a serious threat every week. Kind of similar to Cloyster, where all it takes is one turn, catch your opponent off guard, and all of a sudden, it won the game all by itself. So it'll be interesting to see how much Blastoise can do. I don't think it's necessarily as good as Cloyster, but that could be debated because they're basically the same. But it is still going to be very good for Sacramento this season. As far as whiffs go, I really don't like Arctozolt. I think it's garbage. I can't remember. I think it's a B tier even. It's just absolute garbage. There are really no redeeming qualities to it. Outside of Bolt Beak. I mean, Bolt Beak's a good move, but that's not enough to carry it. Maybe if he had webs or something, but I don't even see webs on the team. So I'm just really not feeling it. He's got some interesting bulky mons. I mean, Piloswine is like the standard for wonderful little bulky gems down in lower tiers. Vileplume is nice. Strength Sap is really good on it. Clefairy, I don't think I've ever seen a Clefairy used outside of VGC, and even that is basically never seen anymore. It'll be interesting to see what it's even going to try to do this season. I don't think its health is high enough for like a Wish Teleport user. I'm not really sure what it's going to do. I guess that'll remain to be seen, but a couple things that I kind of about this team, but overall, I mean, just look at those top three. I didn't even go into G-Max Caparaja or Cinderace for Lord's sake, but just those three are enough to get me pretty dang excited about this team. Number 5, I have the Vegas Golden Magnemites, our champion from Season 4, and also I think Season 1 as well. 2 championships so far for Vegas. Not much has been able to stop his way. He's made playoffs every single year. And when you look at his drafting, you can see why. I love Terrakion in this generation so far. With the massively cut decks, Terrakion is in a place it hasn't been since probably, the original Black and White, before Black White 2 dropped, where it is just wrecking things left and right. It's really nice to see this thing kind of shining in a place it hasn't been in a few years, and it's going to do a lot of work this season. G-Max Hatterini is one of my favorite G-Maxes. Trick Room into max whatever is often enough to net 2 or 3 KOs by itself, and he has some mons on his team that are certainly able to abuse Trick Room if it so is necessary. The Gastrodon next to it. Barbaracle can actually run like a banded switcheroo set or something. A bunch of mons that have kind of middling speed, but oftentimes middling speed under Trick Room is still going to be slower than your opponent anyway. Things I don't particularly like about this draft, I really don't like Flygon. I know it's a very unpopular opinion, but I think Flygon is absolute garbage. Flygon is probably one of my least favorite mons to use competitively. And when you've already got a dragon like Duraludon, and you've got a bunch of things that can run ground moves like Terrakion or Gastrodon or Barbaracle, I really don't see the benefit in having this. I don't think it's a good Dragon Dance Sweeper. I don't think it's a good Scarfer. It's a terrible defogger. I hope for his sake he gets rid of it for God only knows what else, but most things have to be better than it. Number 6, Boston Red Sox. Boston is cursed with the ability to make the final match almost every season but never actually win. And a lot of that is due to the strength of his drafting along with his play. Looking at the team itself, he gets to use Kyurem, which seems odd if you've played draft before, where it's not necessarily what you think of as the headline star. But Galar has made Kyurem an absolute monster. Before, it was mostly known as a Specs attacker. There's that fun pressure roost set. And those are certainly still viable, even more so now that Kyurem has freeze dry. But the one thing that made Kyurem suddenly much stronger, and Kyurem Black even strong enough to be banned, is the fact that it has access to Dragon Dance plus Icicle Spear now. With the combination of those two moves, it actually has a decent physical offensive set. And it's going to be so versatile that your opponent has to know or be able to guess right what set is coming every week, because if they guess wrong, it's probably just going to steamroll them. And now that it's up to 3 real good sets, it's going to be significantly harder, and it's going to get much more favorable matchups than it used to do. Vaporeon, I can never say enough good things about Vaporeon. It is just one of my favorite defensive pivots that aren't named Chansey. Wish, Scald, Toxic, Roar, all sorts of fun things. Dry baton passing, all sorts of great things. It just makes it a wonderful pivot. Girder, I love Girder. It's one of those low tier mons that always seems to do way more work than it ever should. And now that Girder and Conkeldurr, for whatever ungodly reason, they have defog. So, while it may not always have a slot for that, I mean, come on, why? Why does it have defog? It's a great move, but what is it doing? Sweeping its beam at the opponent? It's just it's so dumb. Things I don't like about the team, I don't like Dreadnought on this team. I think Boston was the last or maybe the second last team to pick a G-Max Mon, so there were some real bad options left, and maybe it was the best one left, which it probably was, but I mean, this is why a lot of people are picking their G-Maxes early. It's not that Dreadnought's fine. It's going to be weird to make work on this team. There's a couple Rain Dance users that could actually summon the rain to help it, since it can't do itself with its G-Max. If its G-Max move was the rock type to set the rocks and water could still make rain, I would be absolutely love this pick, but I think it's going to prove to be a little too clunky to do a lot of work this season. Number 7, I have the Tampa Bay Toxtricity. I still have a hard time kind of placing this team. All the parts seem like they're really good. Dragapult is just, it's the new shit for dragon types and Galar. It's got darts, it's got wonderful special moves, it's got all sorts of fun stuff. Sylveon, Incineroar, Seismitoad, Hitmontop. You got a lot of good, fat, bulky, middle of the road type stuff here to help fill out a team. I guess it's just I feel like Dragapult's probably going to have to do a lot of overtime this season because there aren't a lot of real sweepers so much in this team. Whiffs, I don't like Berserker. I know it's important to have, like, you got to have a good steel type in general to have a good team that's somewhat conventional thinking. But Berserker just ain't it. There's got to be something in C tier that could, do a little something. I have to imagine. Trade Berserker for Mudsdale and then use a coach trade to get Steelix from Tennessee or something, because I don't think that Berserker is the way. There's no webs on this team to help it. It's just going to be hard to get in and be effective to use it, I think, this season. At number 8 is probably the most interesting team of the entire draft. I can't decide yet if it's great or if it's awful, so I've kind of got them in the middle. But Seattle Superiors have gone full sun. There are 3 very good fire types on this team. You got G-Max Charizard, you got Darmanitan, you got Torkoal to actually set the sun, and then you've got Venusaur to abuse the sun, which with Weather Ball is basically a fire type all on its own. All 4 together, I mean, it's actually really, really interesting. All 3, like, you can just blow through your opponent's fire resists by just spamming fire moves at them. It's almost, now of course Venusaur's a grass type and can get train or whatever, but it's so all in. I think it's going to lead to some really interesting games this season. And this isn't even going into Hydreigon, which with the access to Nasty Plot that it gets is also all of a sudden got whole new paths of sweeping available to it. Things I don't really like on the team. I hate Doublade. I think Doublade is just kind of a messy wall. It's not good at blocking attacks. It's not good at attacking. It's just kind of... Mantine feels a little weird, but it was a C tier, and there's usually not that many good things in C that are of Mantine's quality. It might have trouble meshing with the team a little bit, but it doesn't really bother me as much. I just don't think Doublade really has a place on this team at all. At number 9, I have the Bolton Bulls. With Bolton, there's a lot of really good old school mons that were drafted. You've got Excadrill Gigalith for a really good sand offense combo. You've got Weavile, who is an insane sweeper or even a stall breaker. I personally absolutely love G-Max Alcremie. I think the ability that Alcremie has with G-Max, whatever its G-Max name is, to heal itself off attacks in G-Max form is actually super underrated. That's one of the things about the G-Max mons is while they have a ton of health, they can't really heal themselves while they're in G-Max form. And with Alcremie, if you get a Calm Mind or 2 up, all of a sudden you're dropping those fairy types G-Max moves, and while you might be getting hit by your opponent, you're also healing up. And I think that's a actually surprisingly underrated ability for a G-Max mon. For whiffs, Pyukumuku, Gourgeist, I think they're both about the lowest possible form of water and or grass defensive mon that you can have. I think Pyukumuku is mostly a gimmick, and unless you're looking to, PP stall someone with it, it's really not the way. Gourgeist is kind of just another messy mon where it can't really block well. It can't really attack at all. It just kind of doesn't really have a place in a battle for the most part. But just, that good old school Excadrill, Gigalith, Weavile type style with Alcremie, Goodra, Rotom. There's just some real other good stuff there that really kind of keeps this team afloat. At number 10, I have the GWS Gladiators. This team is exactly what I would write down if I was asked, how do you think Kronos is going to draft a team? All I see on that team are sticky web users, sticky web abusers, and weakness policy abusers. I mean, look at this. Necrozma, Prism Armor, now that it has Dragon Dance and not just Autotomize, is the absolute image of weakness policy. Colossal, I can't even count the number of times that I think that Kronos is going to sacrifice Colossal to a water move this season, trying to get a weakness policy, steam engine boost off. Even in the sun, it's going to take a lot. I guarantee you it's going to die at least 2 or 3 times trying to get that boost. It's just everything there kind of wants weakness policy. Lacrosse likes weakness policy. Okay, so that's about it. But then you've got like a mini Suncor with Ninetales, Shiftry. There's just a lot of really interesting things there. Things I don't like. I don't think Lunatone should ever be drafted. I don't really know what it does, like what its purpose is. It doesn't really seem to have one. Another thing I'm not a huge fan of is how hard into kind of like the sticky web mindset. It looks like he's kind of gone. I think it becomes, obviously he won't. Okay, I say obviously, but I mean, you never actually know. But I don't think he's going to bring it every single week. But I feel like because it's so obviously there, everyone's going to be just super prepped for it, and then it's never really going to be effective. I don't think it was necessary to have both a Requinid and Slurpuff, but maybe you can make it work. I mean, both wands have completely viable, very wonderful sets outside of webs, but I don't think if he ever brings webs, they're going to be as effective as he thinks they would have been if he hadn't drafted one of the 2 of the web users, I guess is what I'm saying. Number 11, I have the Warsaw Rapidash. First overall pick, grab Jirachi. You can never be mad at a Jirachi going number 1 overall, especially now that it has so many fun new tools that it didn't have before. It gained access to stored power, which it should have. That's so wrong. There's just so many ways I can think of that being abused this season. It also has access to Aura Sphere now, because why not? Let's just give all the psychic types Aura Sphere, and now Dark Types don't mean anything. Rotom Wash is always a super solid mon. Now that it has Nasty Plot, it's even better. Roserade, even now that Technician doesn't mean as much as it used to with Hidden Power being gone, I really, really think Roserade is an underrated mon. I won't be surprised to see it coming a little bulkier this season, maybe even poison pointing some folks. Gmax Toxtricity. I like regular Toxtricity more, to be honest, simply because the Gmax Stun Shock is so unreliable to get the effect you want, but it's an interesting mod nonetheless, and I'll like to watch it in battle. Hitmonchan, Drifblim are both Pokemon that I really don't like. Hitmonchan is like, I don't know what it is about it, but it's never done anything for me. It's important to have some sort of hazard control outside of Rotom Wash, which I think it might be it. I guess Drifblim probably gets Defog as well, but that's another thing. You don't really want to be running Defog on Drifblim. I think with the new stuff, maybe there's some sort of weird Drifblim set you can make work, but it's one of those monsters that's kind of ungainly, so I just don't have a lot of faith in it. At number 12, we have the Rochester Raboot. The first draft in Galar with Mew, which has been, I guess, controversial or something. I guess some people think Mew is too strong now that it has access to literally everything ever. Obviously it had basically everything before, but now it's got like spikes and toxic spikes and dragon dance, and with bank out, it's got access to, it can actually run bulky sets again. So I guess it's too much or whatever, but I think it's still fine. We'll see, I guess, this season how it does. Gmax Snorlax, I love regular Snorlax in draft. I think I really, really have a soft spot for Curse Mons that can just take over an entire match in like one turn like that. And Snorlax, just like, Gmax Snorlax, I should say, is a darn good user of the Curse set, simply due to the fact that its Gmax Replenish can bring back berries too, which is an absolutely underrated ability for it. Nothing like being able to heal after you attack, kind of like how I really like Gmax Alcremie. Now, the berries, the fat berries, were nerfed like Iapapa and whatnot from healing 50% to 33%, which, I'm all for it from a competitive standpoint, but it does present a slight nerf to Snorlax itself. Things I don't particularly like about this team. This is a very fat team overall. there's very few things here that go like, wow, that's an offensive mon, kind of like Inteleon or Chandelure. So in that kind of team, I don't like Hippowdon as a defensive wall pivot, whatever you want to call it. Hippowdon is really good. I don't like it on defensive teams that are going to get chipped by your own Sandstorm. If I look at his team, he has one mon that's immune to Sandstorm outside of Hippowdon, and that's Caparaja. All his defensive mons, Snorlax, Mew, Aromatisse, Roselia, Scrafty, defensive. All of them get chipped by Sandstorm, which kind of lowers their whole defensive viability as a group. As far as other things, I don't like Roselia. I like Roserade a lot. I don't like Roselia nearly as much. It's not really that much better at defending than Roserade, but it's a whole lot worse offensively, which I think will kind of hinder him. Hopefully, I got to imagine there's at least one or two better grass types that could be bulky or some such that are still available. At number 13, I have the Farmland Farfetch'd. I really like Obstagoon. I really like it in draft. I really like it on ladder. I like it everywhere. I think it's fantastic. Flame Orb plus Facade, Stab Facade is just really, really good. Obstagoon is basically what I wish Alolan Raticate was, to be honest. But regardless, it's a very good pick. Very offensive with that and Toxtricity. I really like G-Max Corviknight. It's less that I like G-Max specifically on Corviknight because I think the G-Max form is actually pretty bad. But I really like having, I really like when someone picks a G-Max that is also an S tier simply because it's a lot more overall power. Because while all G-Max are pretty good for 3 turns, it's when they're good outside of that that's important. When I look at the rest of the team, though, that's kind of where I really start to kind of feel iffy about the draft as a whole. In the whiffs, I have Quagsire, Dusclops, but you could really substitute in most of the other fat do-nothing mons for the most part. Because if you look at the team as a whole, the first 4 slots, Corviknight, Toxapex, Toxtricity, Obstagoon, you've got 2 very good defensive mons, 2 very good offensive mons, and then you've got, after that, 4 defense, Hitmonlee, and then a Meowstic, which is kind of and is often defensive also. So I feel like this team is really fat. I think this is overall by far the slowest team in the league right now, and I think it's going to struggle when, if Toxtricity or Obstagoon can't quite get it done on their own, the team is going to fall apart. I think because the really fat, really bulky teams generally don't do as well in draft. It's just they're a lot easier to exploit, especially with how absolutely insane some breakers are and whatnot in Gala right now. At number 14, I have the Hexaville Honchcrows. Picked Corviknight in round 1, which is a pick I absolutely love. Corviknight is a great mon. It's good in draft. It's good in ladder. It's good everywhere. I don't know if it's better than Skarmory, which isn't around, but it's wonderful. The rest of the draft, I don't feel quite as confident about. Komodo is a decent pick. It's got Dragon Dance. We've banned the Omni Boost on it, so it can't use Clangorous Soul or whatever that move is called now. So really, it's only got the Dragon Dance set done. It is actually a very good defensive mon as well now. It boasts the strongest body press in the game, which is pretty nice. Gardevoir's fine. Serena's fine. I actually highlighted Boltund. I really like Boltund right now. A lot of electric types just got the absolute, stick beat into them. I don't know where I was going with that. But just got, absolutely devastated by the loss of hidden power. But Boltund, a new creation with, in Galar, blazing fast 121 speed, actually doesn't mind because it's a physical attacker and it's got strong jaw and it's got a bunch of fun little coverage moves. I don't think it's particularly great or whatever, but I think it's probably one of the more interesting electric types that are free right now. So I'm kind of interested to see where it's going to go this season. G-Max Anaconda, I don't particularly like. I don't think Sandaconda is that good, and a lot of times when you're looking at a G-Max, you're looking for something that when it G-maxes, just gives off absolutely insane offensive pressure, which Sandaconda has a hard time doing. Most of the time when it does it, it's going to be doing it off of coil boosting or something. And in that case, the G-max form isn't even really necessary in the first place. But it's got coil, it's got rocks, it's got glare, it's got sand spit, which actually doesn't matter at all with this team. And it doesn't have any way to abuse that. So I'd be surprised if you ever see that. And probably shed skin, I think is its other ability or something. Honestly, I don't actually know. It's just so irrelevant for the most part. Thievel is the other pick that just kind of sticks out to me as a Y. Thievel, when you look at its stats, and for the most part you go, okay, and its abilities, you go, okay, maybe there's something there. It's got like stats. I think it's fast, but it's got Unburden. The problem is when you look at its move pool is literal garbage. It's like Nasty Plot and then only Dark Attacks. It just can't really get anything off the ground. So I think it's probably better left behind all the time, in which case you may as well just drop it and see if you can find something better. The Atlanta Beedrills are my number 15 team. It's kind of gotten to the point where it's like, I don't know how I feel when I say I think the best spawn on his team is Ditto. Ditto's really good, especially when there are some G-Max things allowed, because if they get like stat boosts or whatever off G-Max moves or max moves that they have while they're G-Maxing, Ditto can sweep back pretty easily. But, it can't G-Max obviously itself. But, Ditto's never really a bad pick. With his team, I hope he brings it every week because he'll need it. Darmanitan G, we've banned Guerrilla Tactics. I think Zen Mode is perfectly fine. It's just going to be difficult for him to make it work every week because there's just not as many sets that really work with it. The obvious one is, of course, the sub-drum set, but you can't run that every week. You're just going to get, it's going to get stopped pretty often. So he's going to have to find fun ways to make Zen Mode specifically work without relying on sub-belly drum. As far as other things go, Togekiss is fine, Silhouette is fine, Jolteon is really, really, really hurt without hidden power. And, he's got some just kind of Mons, Beware, Claydol have uses, Lantern, I don't like that much. Flareon's actually an interesting mon simply because Heavy Duty Moots actually gave it the ability to be some sort of weird like defensive kind of pivot or something outside of like, the standard guts offensive build that you would usually see. G-Max Appleton I really don't like. I don't think Appleton is particularly good, and G-Max Appleton doesn't really add anything to the picture that this team is going to want, I don't think. And then rounding out with team number 16, the Toronto Torterras. There are some things in here I kind of like. I really like Clefable. Maybe it's better in ladder or something, but Clefable does get some fun draft stuff. It could be a wonderful offensive mon with Life Orb. It can be a pretty dang good pivot with Wish and Teleport and Soft Boiled and Rocks and Thunder Wave. And it can pull out those really, really infuriating, what do they call it? Like the setup sweeper with Calm Mind and whatnot, and just go to town on you, late game as well. G-Max Lapras I actually don't particularly like on this team because I don't think he has the sweepers that G-Max Lapras really wants to support with its resonance. You see Lucario and Celebi as probably his best sweepers overall, setup sweepers with Nasty Plot or Swords Dance or whatever. But neither one, I don't think, have the absolute impact that you would hope for when you're trying to abuse something like G-Max Lapras. Something like Shell Smash or Swords Dance Terrakion or, just something that's maybe faster and stronger than those are. Is really kind of what you'd be looking for. Then I look at the rest of the team. I like Rotom Frost actually. Rotom Frost is one of those mons where I really, really want to use it. I'm just terrified to use it because Blizzard is a move that hurts me. But Nasty Plot plus Electric plus Ice is a very, very interesting starting point. Turtonator I think is a very, very bad mon. Malamar Malamar is one of those things where I see it and I'm like, ooh, I like Malamar. And then whenever I see it in practice, it just never does anything. So I'm kind of about it. Dracloak, I don't really know where I stand on Dracloak. I don't particularly like it, but it's, a fast. It's got Dragon. It's got Ghost. It's got Dragon Dance. It might be able to make things work. And then, of course, we've got a meme pick in his last slot with Snom, which I'm not going to really put into words how much it bothers me, but I pray to God that he gets rid of it as soon as possible so that he can, actually have a full team and not a team of 9, because I really, really don't like seeing meme picks on an actual team in a competitive league. But I'm just going to leave it there. So after we've gone through all 16, we just got a little overview for you for the end. And we will take a look. I'm planning to do one of these every week. They're not going to be standings per se, because I'm not going to go simply by the standings. You'll see that there'll be people with worse records over people with better records or whatever. But I will update it every week and drop a new shorter video. Certainly not as long as this one. Kind of see how teams do throughout the season. And I'll be super interested to see how the rankings look after all 12 weeks compared to how they look today. And we'll see what changes. But that's really all I got for you guys today. So until next week, have a great time.